Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to see everyone here this morning. And we are a church here that is here to help people find and follow Jesus. For those of you who had a chance on Wednesday to go out and just bless somebody by paying it forward, we heard some of the things that were done, and we were greatly encouraged. We pray that those that you blessed put a smile on their face, and it was a great time to be able to go and do that together. And we are looking forward to this coming Wednesday, where we are going to be making sandwiches together, because we are a church that is on mission together. We are the hands and feet of Jesus. So think of some people that you would like to invite to come and help make sandwiches. Just to give you a heads up right now, we are so grateful for the overwhelming response. We have more than enough. We'll be able to make more sandwiches than we thought. So thank you so much for those who have contributed to the ingredients for our lunches. Thank you so much for that. We're looking forward to that on Wednesday, so please be a part of that. And one other thing that we are about to starting in September, we are going to start the New Testament in a year. So there was 39 books in the Old Testament. We are about done. We've got a few left, and we'll be done for September 1st, and then we're going to start the New Testament. There's only 27, and they're a lot shorter, which means a chapter a day. It's not a lot to kind of go through, but we would love to do this together. So if you haven't kind of jumped in yet, this will be a great time for you to jump in as we go through the New Testament together. But for those of us who went through the Old Testament, we're going to be able to see some of the things that Jesus said. You're going to have some light bulbs going off thinking, that's why he said it, because that's what Isaiah said, or that's what Jeremiah said. So we're going to look at that together, and we're going to start a series in the teachings of Jesus through Matthew that's really going to help bring that to life. So hopefully you can be with us, but you're going to get a lot more out of it if you make a decision that, hey, I can read a chapter a day, and I can actually dig in to find out why he says it, because we are a people who love the Word of God together, and so that's what we want to do, and we want to find out more about this Jesus we are helping people find and follow him. So we're in good company. Let me show you why. For those of you who have gone through this Old Testament together, a lot of these names that we're going to share are going to come to light. Some of you are maybe questioning why on earth would God use such people, because they were a mess, and it's true. But again, we're in good company. God doesn't take the ones who are perfect. He makes them perfect, and he uses your weaknesses to make them his strengths, and he uses us together. But just to start our message this morning, this is a message about keep the faith. This is one of the most popular passages in Hebrews. It's Hebrews chapter 11. It's the hall of faith. And so keep the faith and keep running is our message this morning. But I first of all want to show you some people that God used. And we're going to read about some of them in a moment. But he calls the unqualified. Maybe some of you have seen this on a poster, you've seen it on a t-shirt or anything like that. But Noah was a drunk. Abraham was too old. Jacob was a liar. Leah was ugly, poor Leah. Joseph was abused. Moses was a stuttering criminal. Samson was promiscuous. Gideon was doubtful. Rahab was a prostitute. Jeremiah was depressed. David had an affair and committed murder. Elijah was mentally unbalanced and suicidal. Isaiah preached naked. When God called Jonah, Jonah ran away. Naomi was an old widow. Job went bankrupt. Peter betrayed Jesus. The disciples fell asleep. Many of them took off. Martha was a warrior. The Samaritan woman was a multiple divorcee. Zacchaeus was greedy. Paul was ingrained in another religion. Timothy was too young and had ulcers. And Lazarus was dead. So we are in good company. Let me start off like that. God calls the unqualified. This whole letter that we are going to read this morning together would have been read in one sitting like this, the whole book of Hebrews. It was a sermon that was being passed around. They would have had a letter, and someone would have read it in the company of the church as they met. But today, we're not going to do that. We're just going to read chapter 11 in this way. But it talks a lot about faith. It talks about what faith is. It talks a lot about what it means to have faith. It talks about those who lived by faith. And all of these names mentioned, none of them, this is really important, none of them received or got to experience that which they were promised and chose to live for. They didn't get to receive the promise in their time, but they had faith that what was coming and that which was in store for them was going to be worth it. And so they hung in there, despite their weaknesses, even though it was not going to come to fruition in their lifetime. So we're going to take a moment. For those of you who have your Bibles, this would be a great time just to open them. If you have them on your phones, just open to Hebrews chapter 11. And we're just going to read this together. I'm going to be reading from the NIV version. But I put this slide together so you could see the unfolding story of God. Every one of these people from the beginning to Jesus is mentioned in sequence. So if you don't have your Bibles, just keep your eyes focused on these names that are mentioned. And for those of us who's kind of dug through the Old Testament, these names are going to come up and you'll remember these names. But they weren't perfect people by any means. But there's something really unique in regards to how Jesus makes them perfect. At the end, we'll get there. It said, now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for, all of them who have gone before. By faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. By faith, Abel offered God a better sacrifice than Cain. By faith, he was commended as a righteous man when God spoke well of his offering. And by faith, he still speaks even though he is dead. By faith, Enoch was taken from this life so that he did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away. For before he was taken, he was commended as one who pleased God. And without faith, listen to this, and without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. By faith, Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear built an ark to save his family. By his faith, he condemned the world and became the heir of righteousness that comes by faith. And by faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as an inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land, like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. And by faith, Abraham, when though he was past age, and Sarah herself was barren, was enabled to become a father because he considered him faithful who had made the promise. And so, from this one man, and he as good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and countless as the sand on the seashore. All these people were still living by faith when they died. And listen to this. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance. And they admitted that they were aliens and strangers on earth. People who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. By faith, Abraham, when God tested him, offered Isaac as a sacrifice. He who had received the promise was about to sacrifice his one and only son. Even though God said to him, "It is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned," Abraham reasoned, I love this, that God could raise the dead. And figuratively speaking, he did receive Isaac back from death. By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau in regard to their future. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of Joseph's sons, and worshipped as he leaned on the top of his staff. By faith, Joseph, when his end was near, spoke about the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt and gave instructions about his bones. By faith, Moses' parents hid him for 3 months after he was born because they saw he was no ordinary child, and they were not afraid of the king's edict. By faith, Moses, when he had grown up, he refused, listen to this, he refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose to be mistreated along with the people of God rather than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a short time. He regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ. We're going to come back to that in a moment. Christ was nowhere near in the timeline, but he considered disgrace for the sake of Christ as greater value than the treasures of Egypt because he was looking ahead to his reward. And by faith, he left Egypt, not fearing the king's anger. He persevered because he saw him who is invisible. By faith, he kept the Passover and the sprinkling of blood, so that the destroyer of the firstborn would not touch the firstborn of Israel. And by faith, the people passed through the Red Sea on dry ground, but when the Egyptians tried to, they were drowned. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell after the people had marched around them for 7 days. By faith, the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was not killed with those who were disobedient. And what more shall I say? I do not have time to tell about Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, and gained what was promised, who shut the mouths of lions, quenched the fury of the flames, and escaped the edge of the sword, whose weakness was turned to strength, and who became powerful in battle and routed foreign armies. Women received back their dead, raised to life again. Now it takes a turn. Those stories are incredible. Those stories are amazing. Some of them are what keep us going. But what about these? Others were tortured and refused to be released so that they might gain a better resurrection. Some faced jeers and flogging, while still others were chained and put in prison. They were stoned. They were sawed in two. They were put to death by the sword. They went about in sheep's clothing and goat skins, destitute, persecuted, and mistreated. The world was not worthy of them. They wandered in deserts and mountains and in caves and holes in the ground. But listen to this. These were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised. God had planned, this is really cool, God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. We are a part of this story along with them. I want to take a close look at faith here for a moment. This is the way Hebrews chapter 1 or 11 verse 1 describes it. Now, faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain for what we do not see. Sorry, I made a mistake, but it sounds slang, doesn't it? Now, faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain for what we do not see. Here is the NIV, the latest edition. Now, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. And the King James Version says faith is the substance of things hoped for, and it's evidence of things not seen. A lot of times what we try to do is we try to explain faith as a belief. Oh, I believe in God. Oh, interesting. But belief is something that goes on in our heads. But this chapter is describing something bigger of what faith is. Faith is describing something more about our actions, about what we believe, and our choices. See, faith begins with reason. It begins with us believing, but it doesn't stop there. Faith is not completed until there's faithful action and obedience. So, I'm going to ask you a question. Is there a chair behind me? Is there a chair behind me? No, there's not. Do you not see it? I'm just kidding. Is there a chair behind me? Can I have you girls come here for a second? We already practiced this. You guys might see a chair. I don't see a chair. And just so you don't think that I am cheating, I have Gabby and Hannah, and they are the ones that I believe in. I trust their voice. So I've asked them if they can take me, who can't see anything, but I believe them. I believe the fact that there is a chair behind me because they told me earlier. But they're going to get me to that chair. So Gabby, Hannah, I hope you guys are together in this. But I need you to get me to the chair. What do I have to do? You tell me where to move. I can't hear you. Move right. This is my right or this is my right? This one? That's my left. Okay, I'll go to your right. This way? How much further? I don't want to fall off the stage. Stop? And now what? Go backwards? How far? Stop. Now what? I can? Are you sure? Is there a chair behind me? There's not a tack on it or anything. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Can I give them a round of applause? Can we do that? Thank you very much. Okay, I trust you girls. Thank you for guiding me with your life. You can go back and sit down if you want. Okay, I couldn't see a chair. It's unfortunate. I knew it was there because I saw it. But think about those who didn't see it. Think about those who didn't see the one who was invisible, who is God, and yet put their faith in him because they believed him and they moved by their actions. Their actions showed that they had faith in God. So Hebrews 11 is all about those who chose to believe and act and respond to something they could not see and would not see in their lifetime. But they trusted in the one who gave the promise, because faith is about an experience. Faith is about something that we base on our actions. Faith shows who we believe in. And without actions, our faith is nothing. If we move one book over to James, James was a half-brother of Jesus. This is what he says. What good is it, dear brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith but don't show it by your actions? Can that kind of faith save anyone? Suppose you see a brother or sister who has no food or clothing and you say, goodbye, and have a good day. Stay warm and well fed. No. But then you don't go and give that person any food or clothing? What good does that do? So you see, by faith, or faith by itself, isn't enough. Unless it produces good deeds, it is dead and useless. So another plug, Wednesday, come out, we're going to feed the homeless together. It's going to be fun. But it's not so much about who we're feeding, it's about who we're doing it with, and it's about what it does to us on the inside. It's really important, but it shows our faith. It shows our faith. You cannot study your way into faith. You cannot study your way. It doesn't matter how much you know. If you don't put action to it, it doesn't mean anything. You act your way into faith. Faith is a transfer of trust to a God who sees, a God who knows that there is a chair behind me, and he sees the whole picture. Many of you have seen this picture on the internet before. I love this picture because it speaks so much to me. Here's a little girl who has a little teddy bear. She loves this little teddy bear. She sleeps with this little teddy bear at night. She carries this teddy bear whenever she's scared. And Jesus comes down and he says, give me your teddy bear. I don't want to give you my teddy bear. But he has something so much greater for us. But she can't see it. Is she going to trust him or not? Listen to what verse 6 says. And it is impossible to please God without faith. Anyone who wants to come to him must believe that God exists and that he rewards those who sincerely seek him, even though you can't see him. Are you going to trust him? Even if you may not get the promise in your lifetime. So this is what a question I want you to wrestle with as we move forward. Are you okay living a life where you are not the means, but you are the means to an end? Are you okay living a life where you are not the means, but you are the means to an end? See, a lot of times what we ask is, what is my purpose? What am I here for? But when we start thinking of God who sees, and that we are in this unfolding story of God, and we have a part to play, the question we start to ask is this: who am I here for? Who am I here for? Because your story may not be solely about you. See, God's promises sometimes do not come directly to you, and you may not receive them right away. But they may come to fruition through you. And you'll see what I mean here in a moment. I like the way Andy Stanley says this. He says, true purpose is always found just on the other side of what's in it for me. How many times you go around and think, you know what, I'd love to be part of this church, but first of all, I got to ask this question: what's in it for me? What if that's the wrong question? What if the question about being part of God's church is, who am I here for? Who am I here for? And as we watch a little one walk around, who are we here for? Because being part of God's purpose may not be about you, it may be about someone you raise. It may be someone that you have influence on. And until you are willing to be a means to an end, you will never be powered by purpose. Listen to verse 7. It says, it was by faith that Noah built a large boat to save his family from the flood. He obeyed God, who warned him about things that had never happened before. When we do some history in regards to where Noah was when he built this ark, it hadn't rained for years. They didn't know what rain was. They were in the desert. They were in a drought. Could you imagine what Noah would have looked like building some ark? But he acted, and he put his faith into actions, and he saved his family. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place, obeyed, and he went, even though he didn't know where he was going. He was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder was God. He was blessed with a child in his old age, Isaac, because he considered God faithful, who had made the promise. They were longing for a better country, a country not of their own. Moses comes along, and he chose to be mistreated along with the people of God, rather than enjoy the pleasure of sin in Pharaoh's household for a short time. And in verse 26, this is what we highlighted earlier. He regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as greater value than the treasures of Egypt. I find that fascinating. Who was Christ? How did he know about Christ? Christ hadn't come yet. But he knew something was coming, something better, because he was looking forward to his reward. He persevered because he saw him who is invisible. Verse 39 through 40 says, all these people earned a good reputation because of their faith, yet none of them received all that God had promised. For that God had something better in mind for us, so that they would not reach perfection without us. The NIV says, so that only together with us they would be made perfect. We talked about being made perfect last week. Perfect doesn't mean, hey, I got it all together. Perfect means Jesus came and he made us complete. And they celebrate that with us. Those who have gone before celebrate Jesus with us. Because they were longing for Jesus, we get to look back and see what Jesus has done for us. And we get to put our faith in that. Your story may be too small to live for. But the unfolding story of God, if you can have a place in the unfolding story of God, that's a whole other story altogether. I love this story. Louis Giglio, maybe some of you know him. He's a great preacher who put out what's called Indescribable. Something, if you ever want to be in awe of God, it was a great message about the stars and where we are and all that. But Louis tells a story about him and his wife going to a movie theater. And they show up at this movie theater, and they're the only ones there, pretty much. They go sit in the middle section, and there's one person in the front row. This movie had been out for a while. They thought they'd just take this night and go to a quiet theater and enjoy a date. As soon as I sat down, the person in the front row turned and just locked eyes with them. You know how awkward that is in a movie theater? I mean, all these seats around you, and all of a sudden, someone's just staring you down. It wasn't long before he got up, and he started to make his way towards them. And Louis then starts to think, uh-oh, something's whacked here. Am I going to have to protect my wife? What's going on? He made his way to the row just before them, and he came and he sat down. And he turned and he just looked at them. And now Louis is starting to sweat a little bit, not sure what's happening. And he says, have you seen the movie? No, we haven't seen the movie. I'm in the movie. You're what? I'm in the movie. Now they started to relax a little bit. Okay, here's a guy who's pretty proud of the fact that he's in this movie. He goes, yeah, I'm in the bar scene. The what? The bar scene. I'm in the bar scene. Oh, okay. Okay, it's a 2.5-hour movie. He's in the bar scene. 3 frames. When the bar scene came during the movie, he jumped up and he said, did you see me? Did you see me? Proud to be in this movie. Isn't that a lot like our story? When you think about it, when you think of eternity and how we get to be this little blip in God's story, are you excited to be in God's story, even if you had 3 frames? 3 frames. Your influence in the overall grand story of God has the potential to change the direction of someone's life. So play your role well. Let's close out this chapter together by reading and stealing a paragraph from chapter 12. I don't know if any of you got to watch any of the Olympics, but this is what you would have, here, we'll get to that in just one second. We're going to read this together. This is the picture that I want you to have in your head as we go through this. Hebrews 12 says this, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. And let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. Hebrews 11 is all those who are cheering you on, who all believed in a promise they did not get to see in their lifetime, but were looking forward to the promise of Jesus, who we get to live and see. Strip off every weight that slows us down. We're running a race. It goes on, we do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. Because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross, disregarding its shame. Now he is seated in the place of honor beside God's throne. Think of all the hostility he endured from sinful people. Then you won't become weary and give up. Are we focusing on Jesus? Are we focusing on the cross? Could you imagine just for a moment being in the Olympics, running, having this opportunity, and those aren't people in the stands, those are pieces of paper to make it look like there's people in the stands. No one could be there. And you're running this race to a cheerless crowd, to a faceless crowd. Having those who have gone before you, they're not there. Those parents that have traveled to Tokyo to be there to watch you, no, they have to watch from home on TV. Finishing a run at world record time as you cross the finish line and there's silence. We don't have that. We have those who have gone before us, and they are cheering us on. And this is the message the Hebrew writer wants us to see. There is a stadium full of people who have gone before you, cheering you on to stay in the race. Do not give up. And maybe it's not someone that was written in here that's going to give you that perseverance and that endurance. Maybe it's someone close to you, someone who helped you to find Jesus. But this is the key part. In light of all those who have gone before you, who are now cheering you on to keep going, the reward is worth it. Just cross the finish line and don't give up. Don't stop running. I have a video, but before we do this, I'd like for those of you who do not have any communion to go and get communion, because we are going to take communion together as soon as this video is done. So if you can go and get that now. For those of you at home, there's going to be something a little different. Because I don't own rights to the song that goes along with this video, we have to shut it down for those at home, so they will be able to see the video but will not be able to hear the song. But if you want to cheat, you can go onto your phone and just look up "I Can Only Imagine" by Mercy Me. It's a great song. I think music, as Kevin was saying earlier, music is like an art. It helps us to kind of, it just brings emotion to things. And I think this is really important for this video. But while this video is showing, what I want you to be thinking about is the person that has helped you stay in the race. Who has helped you stay in the race? Think about the person that inspires you to continue running, inspires you to live like Jesus. I want you to be thinking about Jesus and what he went through and what he was willing to do for you. Jesus went to a cross. He was crucified. And at this cross, he was nailed to it. And while he was nailed to it, your sins were nailed to it as well. That is what the cross means to us. And he does that. He goes to the cross freely to help you cross the finish line. Think about the crowd and those cheering you on. Think about those who might be in the stands. Think about who you want to be. Who do you want to be in someone else's story? Think about those who you can inspire to stay in the race. Are you the one who is not going to finish alone, but with another that you've locked arms with? We're going to watch this together, and maybe for someone at the back, if you can just get the lights, it might be a little bit better. If you can just shut the lights off, that would be great. Thanks.